All right, we'll go ahead and get started tonight. I hope everyone can hear me. I've been known to talk extremely loud, but if you don't hear me, please let us know. Thank you for coming to our planning and zoning workshop tonight. We're going to do our roll call here and then we'll get started. Margaret Knipple, I am here. Tyler Lane.
Here.
Laura Kelly.
She's not on yet.
She's not on Zoom. Laura Kelly will be visiting us through Zoom meeting. Gary Nelson is absent. Tommy Smith.
Here.
Tommy Coleman.
Here.
And Arlen Gorachowski is absent. All right, the second item is the approval of our March 21st, 2023 meeting minutes. And due to a small error, we didn't have the opportunity to do that. So we will move that to our next meeting.
Correct.
All right. And so we are going to start with our new business, a workshop to discuss the zoning ordinance text amendment and ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance section 618 supplemental regulations to commercial utility grade wind energy conversion systems. And before I turn this over to Jeff, I want to thank everyone for coming. And like I've said at our previous meetings, everyone's opinions are important. We are all neighbors here. And so I hope we can get everyone's information and get it down. And we thank Jeff for setting up a program for us. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Just a few things before I get going this evening and get into my presentation. I'm Jeff Johnson. I'm the county zoning administrator. This was a scheduled joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors. After discussions with the Board of Supervisors, they opted to back out of this meeting respectively. They want the process to continue with the Planning and Zoning Commission and get their recommendation and staff's recommendation before they move forward with their public hearings, which can be up to 3 considerations or 3 hearings before they make a final decision. So with that, I also want to make you aware that the courthouse will be under construction sometime towards the end of April and into May and further on. They're doing some HVAC work. This is going to involve some asbestos removal. And so our meetings, our Planning and Zoning Commission meetings, well, our offices are going to be moved to the Public Health Building come next week. And I believe some of our meetings may be held here. They may be held at the Public Health Building. But stay tuned. You can contact my office. We have to publicize that meeting, our future meetings, and where they're going to be located, the dates and times on Facebook or internet portal or website, etc. And you can always contact our meeting because I know there's a lot of people that are closely following this ordinance amendment. So I'll go ahead and get into my presentation this evening, and we respectively, want your input and comments. If you want to address the board, I recommend you come up here in the center of the room in this location so that the owl can pick you up, because these are recorded meeting minutes, and feel free to address the Planning and Zoning Commission and the public. So with that, if you want to go ahead and. So I want to update where we're at today. The Board of Supervisors directed planning staff to consult with the Planning and Zoning Commission under our wind energy ordinance. And the primary focus was on setbacks from dwelling units and from environmentally sensitive areas. So on February 14th, planning staff consulted with the commission. The commission requested that that's the Board of Supervisors. No, I'm sorry, that's the Planning and Zoning Commission, that a zoning ordinance amendment be drafted. So on March 21st, and a lot of you were in attendance to that meeting, we did have a zoning ordinance amendment prepared for them to act on. And the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend that a joint workshop be scheduled with the Board of Supervisors in April to continue further discussions. And we'll continue further discussions tonight. I was informed April 4th that the Board of Supervisors will not be participating in this meeting, and they felt that the ordinance review process should run its course with the Planning and Zoning Commission without any interference. So if you want to move on to the next slide here. So again, we're focusing on setbacks from environmentally sensitive areas and dwelling units. First, after our meeting, in March, we went back, the chair and myself and Matt Cosgrove, the director of Webster County Conservation, sat down and we looked at our environmentally sensitive areas. And we wanted to make sure we protected the following: Miller Marsh, Brushy Creek, the Des Moines River Corridor, Boone Forks Wildlife Management Area, John F. Kennedy Park, Bob Hay Memorial Conservation Area, and Lizard Creek Wildlife Management Area. And the way the ordinance amendment is drafted, it would provide a 1 mile setback from these environmentally sensitive areas. Okay, this is the ordinance amendment that's been put together as of date. We've increased the setback from the property line from 150 feet to 1.1 times the tower height in case one was to fall. In terms of residential dwelling units, the setback is a 1/4 mile for residential dwelling owners that want to participate in a project, and 1 mile for those that do not want to participate in a project. Road right-of-ways have been increased to 1.1 times the tower height. The next block here are those environmentally sensitive areas that I referenced earlier, and the 1 mile setback requirement. Wetland types, those remain, the distance remained the same at 600 feet. Other structures and cemeteries, we increased the height to 1.1 times the height of the tower. And then the last box down there is the Des Moines River, which requires a 1 mile buffer. So that's it. What I would like to do is turn this over to Mid-American Energy. They really didn't have an opportunity to comment or provide a presentation on this ordinance text amendment, and I can turn this over to Matt Ott. If you want to introduce yourself and tell us where you're coming from.
Yeah, Matt Ott, Mid-American Energy, project developer, so, part of my duty is to develop new wind and solar projects. Like Lundgren, that's already within the county. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak, this evening. Really was kind of asked to kind of, present on the house setback that's being proposed and what that would potentially do. At the last meeting, there was discussion that trying to claim that the board is trying to prevent wind. I don't think that's the case, but effectively a 1 mile setback would essentially do that. Maybe that's not your intention, but develop under that kind of setback would be near impossible. So provided a couple of slides if they're available just for consideration.
Yeah, 1 second here. I'm not sure what quite happened. Okay, we're on here. Up there. Sorry, guys.
There's somebody who'll have a long speech later, so how you got voting.
Thank you.
That's right.
All right. So the first thing we want to do is just kind of look at the surrounding area of Webster County and what the different counties are doing as far as house setbacks. Webster County, you guys have a 1,000-foot setback right now. That's essentially in line with all the other counties that you're seeing right now, from 1,000 feet up to a 1/4 mile in California. All counties except Humboldt is one where we have a wind project in. We've got a wind project back, I think the earliest is 2005. So, these projects have been in service for several years with really no changes to those county ordinances. The only one that I noted that I could find was Boone County. After our wind project, when they had, I believe it was a 600-foot setback for houses. a few years after ours, they put in a 1,250 feet setback. That 1320 is the largest in the area. So as you can see, if a mile was adopted, it would be an outlier compared to the surrounding area. Again, Lundgren has been in operation for several years, nearly 10 years now. To my knowledge, there's no issues with that I'm aware of. So I just think, maybe a more reasonable one setback that would be in line. Basically, that would respect or, people that don't want to participate, don't necessarily want to have a turbine, but also respects the wishes of people that maybe want that opportunity to have a wind turbine on their property. So that 1,500 foot, that's where we cited Lundgren for our non-participants. That was absent your 1,000 foot setback. We went above and beyond that when we see on the side of that project. That's right about where much more, maybe up to 1,800, about the tops is a company could go and reasonably be able to develop a wind project. Next few slides, we took basically a 4 square mile area, 4 sections. As you can see, when we get to the last slide, really points this out, but we kind of put the 1,500 foot setback. That's kind of where we would recommend. This is a kind of a sample. Honestly, it's actually probably higher participation than what we would likely actually see in a wind project. So all the blue dots up there would be houses with a 1,320 or quarter mile participating house setback applied to it. There's 2 houses that we marked in red with that 1,500 foot setback. We then applied a 550 foot setback for the property lines and road right of way. Just kind of using a 500 foot setback or a 500 foot turbine, and then applying the proposed 1.1 times setback to that. To kind of give you an idea of the buildable area. So that red would be landowners that don't want to participate, have that setback applied. That green area is kind of the buildable area where you could place a wind turbine. So after you take all those setbacks in consideration, you're left with about 27% of the area left to place turbines on. That also doesn't take into consideration that other list of different things that we need to look at when we're siting wind turbines. It goes above and beyond, what maybe the county is requirement. Those are requirements that we look at. There's FAA requirements. There's other, licensed microwave beam paths that we have to take into consideration to make sure that we're not interfering with those. So that picture right there has a high participation and doesn't anticipate some of those other potential issues that we need to, or items that we need to cite around.
Okay.
If you go to the next slide, this is 1,800 feet, not buildable acres. From that 2,560 drops down to 688. So it's less. It's not a drastic change. If you go to the next slide, this is what a 1 mile setback would do. Again, high participation. We have all those houses that have signed easements in some form or fashion. Except for 2 houses. You apply really that one house in the middle encompasses 4 square miles. It leaves roughly 4 buildable acres over that entire property. So all of the other property owners that are participating that want wind turbines on their property don't have that ability. They have 14 acres, 0.5%. And that's, again, 1-2 people that essentially, for whatever reason, may not want to participate. So hopefully that provides an example. Even with high participation, it only takes 1 or 2 people at a mile setback to essentially eliminate the ability. So we kind of provided that map last time of our Lund wind project with that 1 mile. Again, it really is the same point, is that 1 mile setback applied to that entire project wipes out 107 turbines.
Matt, I have a question.
Yeah.
How many wind turbines can you put on, say, like 1 acre, or what's the?
Yeah, I mean, they really don't take up, as far as acre wise, they don't take up a lot.
Okay.
You know, all said, it's, you know, it's a really a dot, you
Yep.
know, it's a small area that you have to, essentially, anywhere in that green, you can place a turbine,
Okay.
right? So, you have essentially maybe two, I think technically they called out like 1 acre there in the southwest. So maybe you could get 3, but the problem is people are unlikely to sign up knowing that they're not gonna, right? Everybody wants, generally speaking, everybody signs up, wants to get a wind turbine, right? People will probably not sign up knowing that they're very slim to almost no possibility that they're gonna get a wind turbine. Well, that further, you know, exacerbates the issue, right? I'm not gonna sign my property because I'm doing it because I want the chance of getting a wind turbine. We don't necessarily guarantee that. It's kind of liking it to playing the lottery. You can't get a wind turbine if you don't participate. But in this case, the setbacks would essentially, you know, tell you that you're not gonna win the lottery, so to speak. I guess. So,
Can you go back to the previous slide, please, Allison? So. Oh my gosh. Doesn't want.
If they don't give it up for participation in one single area, will they abandon doing it then?
yeah, so I mean, our projects are all voluntary, so.
What?
Yeah, our projects are all voluntary. We don't force anybody to participate. If we don't, and we tried to make this point last week is, or the last time we met, is we can't force anybody to participate. We don't get a high enough participation. You know, we don't have a project. We have to connect those dots. So, it is a process to get people to participate. So, yeah, I mean, and, you know, I would say it's rare, but yes, we have, you know, had a project that, you know, we tried to develop, didn't get enough participation, and had to essentially abandon the project because we couldn't get enough people to participate.
So on this particular slide, you're showing a buildable acres of 688. How many wind turbines can you put on that?
I mean, this 4 square mile we had, this was actually taken from Lundgren, took out the wind turbines, and just kind of put a hypothetical participation here. A greater participation than we actually had. We had 11 turbines sited at this project. Now, as the wind turbines maybe get larger, the rotors get a little larger, their spacing needs to be spread out a little more. So you might increase your generating capacity at a wind turbine from, you know, 10 years ago, reducing the amount of wind turbines that you need. So it's, you know, it's tough to say because there's a lot of siting that goes into it. We get a wind rose basically telling us where the prevailing winds are. And then we kind of site turbines to capture that wind energy. So generally speaking, east to west, you can have them closer together. North to south, you're separating them out further apart, just to allow for the wind to recover after, you know, that turbulence.
So in a perfect world, though, let's say, how many of those could you put in that space? I mean, you guys have to know.
What was that?
How many, everything was perfect, all your wind currents were perfect. How many can you put in those spaces? With your spacing, with whatever you guys allow for spacing between turbines,
Mhm.
how many can you put in those buildable acre areas?
All right, trying to give you a good reasonable guess at this. Tough without having the actual landowner parcels defined here. You know,
Just from the space standpoint, just from the. just
Yeah,
from
I mean,
what
I'm
you're
gonna
looking at space.
probably just go back to the Lundgren project that this is kind of the base on. I mean, there was 11 turbines, so maybe it's a few more than that, just because we have on this example, there's a little more participation, so, you know, it's probably still at 11 to 12 turbines.
On 688 acres.
Yeah, I mean, the acres is more representation of the space versus, you know, obviously you
I
get.
know.
Yeah, no, I
That's
just,
what we're talking about here today, is space.
no, I understand, but I just, the turbine necessarily takes up a half an acre between the turbine and the access road, right, generally speaking, but that doesn't mean that you can have, 1,200 turbines, obviously, so again, it's around that 11 to 12,
Okay.
back of the napkin, yes, I guess.
All right, Nelson, thank you. Go ahead.
And that's really all I had. I'm happy to answer any questions that I have or address,
Okay.
anything that may come up.
I think there might be a few questions for you, from the
Yeah,
audience.
I'm assuming by that, you're okay with me taking questions. I don't know what your process is, so,
This is just a workshop.
sure, no,
We're
I
not
just want to
voting.
respect your,
Yeah, we're not voting on anything tonight. We're trying to make sure that everyone gets some questions answered. And I think you're probably the person that can maybe answer questions better than the board,
Yeah.
so.
I'm happy to try to take them, and if I can't, for some reason, answer, I'd have to get back to the board. with
And I
those
appreciate that. So if anyone has any questions for Mr. Odd, I would ask if you could come up to the podium, please be respectful, and we'll try to get some questions answered.
How many yards of concrete does it take to build a pedestal for one of the wind farms?
Unfortunately, I don't have the amount of concrete. I'm not an engineer.
How does the rock come out of the ground that you get to make the concrete? What do you use?
Sorry.
Use equipment, where does that come from? What runs the equipment?
You're asking how we build? I'm sorry, I just,
Yeah, how do you get the rock out of the ground? Does it take equipment to do that?
yeah. I
What
mean,
is the
it's
equipment?
construction equipment, right? If it's,
Just construction equipment, what does it burn? I'm just asking.
you're
I have a
asking what
question.
the equipment,
Yeah,
the rock.
What does it
truck,
burn to run the
how it's hauled to the site?
no, what does it burn to run the equipment?
You're asking what it takes to burn, you're asking what the fuel is, right? You're asking gas. from the
Fuel,
dump
yeah,
truck.
right.
Yeah, yep.
And it takes fuel to get it there. It takes fuel to make the fiberglass plates. It takes fuel to get the copper out of the mine. We're wasting our resources on something that's proven that doesn't work. Am I right? What's your opinion? I wanna know. You're getting paid, I understand that, but I wanna know.
Yeah, obviously, it takes inputs to get an output, right? Much like anything else, right? The same with farming, right? You put inputs in, you take inputs out, right? There is a return there, right? That's how, the accounting works. It's the same way here, right? So there are investments in capital investments up front. But there is a return. There's a payback on the carbon intensity, fuel and things like that. Generally speaking, it's about 6 months, maybe over 6 months, as far as the energy in and the energy out.
But there's a payback from our tax dollars, not from sending the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we don't control the federal tax credits or anything like that that we may be, able to take advantage of.
Mhm.
I mean, that's not, my pay grade, right?
And back to the farming thing, we do use oils and we do use non-refurbishable fossil fuels. But you wanna know what? We plant. And that takes COs out of the air. You don't take COs out of the air. Cause every 10 years, you take the blades off and the motors off and you put new blades and motors on. And you gotta haul more rock in. You gotta tear more people's fields up. Yeah, I've seen this rodeo, dude. I've been here. That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
What percentage of electricity stays in the community? How much you've shipped out
Yeah, so
approximately?
you can't necessarily track, where electricity goes, right? It's just impossible to do that as part of a grid, so.
How much do you generate versus? a given-
I'll try to answer your question best I can, if you don't mind. Right, so, one of the advantages we have is we can retire the RECs, the clean, part of our wind generation in the name of our customers. So, our Iowa customers, in 2021, we offset 88.5%, of their usage of electricity in 2021. So, as far as how much stays in Iowa, I mean, Iowa, is top of the nation as far as percentage of, electricity generated that comes from renewable sources.
Then why are you building more?
Yeah, we want, we have a goal of meeting 100% of our customer needs from, renewable sources.
So you're gonna,
There's also the fact that, load increases, right? New businesses get built, there's additional loads, we have to manage, and meet our customers' load.
so then like the coal plants and the nuclear power plants, they'll all be shut down someday?
No, those are still part of our energy mix, right? It's all in the go, right? You still need base load, you still have to have that, high times, of energy use in the summer, and everybody's AC is on. It's a mix of different fuel types that we utilize.
Okay. How much is our property tax gonna go down?
Yeah, we don't set the property tax, right? So London, for example, I believe that estimates is, right now, it's about 2 million annually. How the county handles that, I can't tell you. They have the opportunity to tip that, to spread that out to roads, so it may not be that your taxes go down, but they necessarily, maybe they don't go up, they don't go up as much because there is that $2 million annual that can go.
How much are you gonna be paying the county for every windmill?
What's that?
How much are you gonna pay the county for every windmill?
Right now, at Lundgren, it's 107 turbines, $2 million annually, so whatever that comes out to. I mean, it's all based on the cost of the project. But, we don't necessarily have a project that we have ready to go right now. So I don't necessarily have an exact figure. There's no set number. I mean, the best example I can give you is Lundgren, I guess.
How big is this project that you're working on? Is it just Webster County or is it multiple?
Yeah, right now, it's very early stages, maybe approximately 200 megawatts.
Which is how many towers I'm done to that?
It depends on, what tower. We don't necessarily have a tower that, we are planning to use here. Again, very early stages, it may be 3 or 4 megawatts for wind turbines.
So I called, can I talk for a minute? So I called Mid-America yesterday and talked to a gal, because it's like, I could come, Angela's Julie. And I guess I could come here and ask questions. I thought, why am I going to call Mid-America? And I got the phone number. And so in answer to some of your questions, I asked, how many acres are they looking to obtain for the Gibson wind farm, which is what this wind farm will be called. And she said they're looking to obtain anywhere from 10,000 to 30,000 acres for this one farm. So that's a pretty widespread, that's a lot of land. They currently have 7,000 acres signed up for these ones. I asked her how many counties that involved, and she said mostly Webster, but they also have some in Wright and Hamilton, and they're looking towards Humboldt. I asked her, where does the electricity go? And she said, most of it stays in Iowa, but they do put a portion on the grid and they sell it to other utilities. So they bid on it like a grid. So you probably do know where it goes if you're selling it, I would think. But she couldn't give me a percentage or wouldn't give me a percentage of how much stays in Iowa and how much is sold on the grid. But she did say it goes to the grid, some of it. So, but I couldn't get a percentage for either. She said that, their goal is to have anywhere from 50 to 125 turbines for the Gibson wind farm. But she said that depended on how many contiguous acres they could get signed up. So they weren't sure on that number, she said. But they are looking to be 100% energy, renewable energy for Iowa. And they've applied to the Iowa Utility Board for a wind prime permit to add 2,000 megawatts for Iowa. And I don't quite understand what all that meant, but I also talked to a Dean Tackley. He is a professor at Iowa State University, and he's an agronomy professor and geology. And he did a grad study or grad course on wind energy, and he worked with the Lion Energy Wind Farm in Story County. And he said they have 200 wind farms there. And I asked him just several questions about, the carbon footprint, the health issues, the wildlife issues. He said, as far as the health issues go, there is a thing called for like the blades, they alter the air pressure, like a helicopter would is how he described it, not near as severe. But he said people with inner ear sensitivities, it causes headaches, dizziness, and nausea. So that's a real concern. He also said that blades were replaced every 7 years, so that wind turbine farm in Story County, every 7 years, they went through 600 blades. He said that'll fill up your landed bills pretty quick. He didn't know about the recycling efforts because they were doing studies at Iowa State, but didn't know where they landed. So I don't know, do you know where, how you recycle the blades for your?
Yeah, for the repowering that we have a requirement for our repowering projects. Maybe some of the first ones didn't necessarily have this requirement. All new projects are required to be recycled. So they're usually cut it down on site, shipped off site, it can be reprinted. So it could go to inputs for cement manufacturing. We're working with or looking at, manufacturer that's repurposing them for, planter boxes, different, repurposing of the blades material. So it is a requirement for all projects for repowering.
She mentioned that they go to Tennessee, that she didn't want to have them put them through yet. This Dean Papley also said, as far as the concrete goes, he said when they decommission these windmills, which they will do when nuclear fusion gets going, he said it'll happen. They'll have to decommission all these. And he said they'll only take out 8 to 10 feet of the concrete in your ground. So they basically leave a big rock underneath these in your farmland. And he said that's a question to ask in America. He didn't know the impact of water drainage, water flow. There's been no studies that show what's gonna happen down the road when they leave these big rocks in our farm ground. And everybody knows in the farm ground, you try to. You got cement in your farm ground.
Yeah, I can address, obviously, we're not forcing anybody to sign up, right, that doesn't want to, so, they are taking that, the foundations are a spread footprint, foundation, so they're going 60 feet out. They're already being, farmed around as they are on top of that foundation. So there is a portion of the top that gets removed, but there is a portion that will be left there, Yep, and that's spelled out in the agreements that we have with our landowners.
I did ask him about the migratory, the birds, the eagles and the migrating birds. He said there's rigorous, protocols in place for the eagles. And that you guys have to do environmental studies before and that type of thing. Although there is a take permit, which I found out was passed, the legislation passed in 2009 that utility companies can apply for a take permit, which means they can kill so many eagles every year and get away with that. So, it's just allowed. It's called a take permit. I found this very interesting when I was calling these people. It's really good information. So, anyway, on the migratory birds, he said, most birds and butterflies migrate, they fly much higher than the turbines, like a mile and a half out. They get into the jet stream so that they can move fast. But he said, but for normal flights for geese, they travel a few hundred feet above the ground to get from forage site to forage site. So when they migrate, they're higher than the turbines, but not when they're just like moving around. So that's just something that they can get caught in the turbines. So anyway, that's one of the things. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Mary Larson, and I don't know if any of you have read this, but I would like to give this to your board. It says, the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act. We have many bald eagles that have come back to our area. There is a nest right in the middle of our section. And at the Miller Marsh, there are a lot too, and many of our neighbors here have seen them on their property, but we do not want them destroyed. Thank you.
I don't talk a lot, it's all use the poll that I get. I'm Dave Willard, I live in northeast Webster County. I live on a century farm. I think the one thing we need to look at and consider in all this is skin in the game, and who has skin in the game when it comes to wind turbines, who doesn't benefit from negative outcomes. And if you look at anything across society, across any problem encountered, you should ask yourself who has skin in the game and how that impacts those decisions that are made. So we need to listen to the people with skin in the game, and we need people making decisions to have skin in the game. I think most people in this room would be impacted by wind turbines. They live on those properties or adjacent properties. I know that Mid-American's owned by Berkshire Hathaway. I don't think Warren Buffett would be impacted by a wind turbine. I don't think he lives within 700 feet of a wind turbine or a quarter mile. I know some large landowners in this area who I don't need to name, but you all know, don't have wind turbines anywhere near their properties or their grandchildren's properties or their children's properties. Even the ones that are for it. So I don't think they have any skin in the game when it comes to wind turbines. So people without skin in the game are not invested in communities. The money from rent from the windmills does not stay in the communities. A lot of landowners who live out of state, who cash rent their crops, that money would not stay in the community. Our Tri-County, I live in Northeast Webster, like I said, so I'm right by Wright, Hamilton, and that Tri-County area that has solar farms, that has wind farms, that has ethanol plants, it has hog confinements, it has chicken confinements. There's 2 carbon pipelines that are being discussed to be put through our land. And they're drilling for hydrogen wells less than a mile from my house. So my point is, you talk to any city administrator in any small town around here, you talk to any economic development committee, and they ask the same question: where are all the young people at? We have trouble retaining young people here. Well, if you allow your land to be raised by corporations for a tax incentive, why would anybody stick around? No wonder everybody's moving to Anchorage. We have all of these things I just mentioned, which, by the way, don't exist in the free market. It's all tax incentive and it's tax refunded, which I will get into later. Because you have decisions being made by nobody with skin in the game. All right, why have we been at war since Vietnam? Because the congressmen are sending their kids overseas. The congressmen are fighting. Why did the banking system collapse in 2008? How many bankers went to jail? Nobody. There's no skin in the game there. That's why. Okay? There's no Mid-American execs, I guarantee, that live within a quarter mile of a wind turbine. Do you live, not to make this person, do you live within, what's close to wind turbine? Over half mile?
Probably not the size of we're talking. There's
Okay.
one that's on the DMAC campus, I would propose.
Okay. My second point, I have 3 points, so I won't bore you too terribly long. My second point is, in my opinion, the wind turbines proposed are obsolete technology. They're already obsolete. Okay? We have the ability to manipulate atoms. Nuclear fission exists. Nuclear fusion exists. And we want to put up windmills. That's like you're watching an internal combustion engine and then saying, I'm gonna go put up more stables for horses and build covered wagons. Okay, it's like you see the power of a laptop computer and say, I'm gonna go to school to repair typewriters. Okay, nuclear energy exists, and Mid-American has nuclear energy plants. There's one in Quad City. Okay, our submarine fleet for the military runs on nuclear energy without problems. Most of France is powered by nuclear energy without problems. Okay. My third point, and finally, is embedded growth obligations. And what is an embedded growth obligation? How corporations work, and I'm sure Mid-American's no different. The budget will come out by the executives. They'll say, we need to grow sales by 3%. We need to grow by 5%, 8%, whatever. We got to grow profits by 6%. And then they will pass down the chain of command saying, increase sales by 3%, what our budget says go do it. It's not based on anything, it's just based on growth. Okay, so corporations and cancer are very similar. All they know is growth. They don't know what's right for the land. They don't know what's right for 100 years from now for our grandkids. All they know is growth. They have to maximize shareholder value. That's how corporations operate. Okay, I know because I work for a co-op, the board of directors, same thing. Okay, it's no different. I'm sure you disagree. That's maybe fair.
Mid-American?
Yeah.
I don't know, the accounting, we're different, because we're a rate regulated utility, we have a 10%, I believe a 10% return. So it's, you know, it might be different, but I understand your point.
Okay. So, I told you to get back to the tax, side of things. I'm a CPA, so, not that I'm an expert, but, I know a little bit about it. So Mid-American in 2022 made $191 from operations. That was their net. Their tax benefit was $770 million. Almost 4 times their operating income was reimbursed by taxpayers. $770 million in tax income alone in 1 year. Okay, the year before, just to show that this is not an outlier, was $675 million. In both instances, it's 3 to 4 times their operating income was paid for by you, everyone in this room, and other people, I'm assuming. Now, not all of that is incentive, from wind energy credits. Some of that has to do with, how taxes are figured based on tax versus accrual basis. That's a little bit of it, but that's the majority. Matter of fact, $372 million in 2022 came from solely income tax credits, and $262 million came in 2021 came from income tax credits. In both cases, that's over 2 times what they made from operating income for the year was just in income tax credits alone from the taxpayer. Okay. In regards to, you know, looking to other counties to what they're doing and setting a precedent, I don't know that that's necessary or required or even meaningful. It shouldn't be about what other counties are doing. It should be about what's right for Webster County. I don't care what Wright County does. I don't care what Boone County does. What's right for Webster County. So I think that is an irrelevant point, regarding his first line. Yes, it's nice and all to compare, but there's no reason to compare what other counties are doing. We're our own county. We're not based on them for wind energy, okay? Okay. So that's about all I had. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comments? Sir?
I have a question. On the FAA setbacks or limitations, what can you tell me what Mid-America's already done so far as this particular wind farm?
We haven't done anything as far as, well, as far as FAAs, you know, you would actually have to have a turbine site and then you would file for determination. The FAA would then look at that depending on the height and go through the screening process where different agencies would review it for airspace obstructions. We're not at that point.
What is the anticipated height of the wind turbines here?
Again, we don't have necessarily a certain model, you know, roughly, you know, I'm gonna say it's right around most modern turbines are right around that 500 foot height, total tip height today. Longer, for example, I believe that was 440 feet tall for those wind turbines.
So general rule of thumb, after I've talked to Mr. Buck Reynolds of the FAA, minimum setback from an airport is 2 miles, so level can be up to 10 miles. Half the people in here are in the flight pad going into the Fort Dodge Airport. I mean, I guess my question is, if Mid-America's done their homework, and we have, you know, ingoing, outgoing passenger airlines coming in, it surprises me that they have not done any more than that to look at what the setback would be. Because if the setback is, for example, I'll use Nick as an example, the setback is 6 miles away, it's damn near to his house.
Yeah, understand, we're just not to that point, very early stages of just gathering to see if there's enough interest to support a project that would warrant to go for those additional studies. Very right, an airspace analysis, good return that says, you know, here's the airspace that you need to stay under, and it could be X miles away, you know, 2 miles away from an airport. So those people that may be in that flight path or that airspace, you know, wouldn't have that opportunity to have a wind turbine.
This
So
is my understanding that you do not have to file for an aeronautical obstruction review until 45 days before construction starts.
we need the determination before we start construction.
Well, I just said before, 45.
Yeah, I believe their review process is longer than that. I mean, you know, depending on the height of the turbine, it can extend it out beyond, but I don't know the exact timeline is what their deadline, their outside deadline is. But we do need those determinations before we proceed with, constructing a wind turbine. And there's notices that they require, so many days before, and when you reach your greatest height as well.
So late or mid to late season as a farmer, which I am, I use aircraft to apply some products. And I've talked to a couple of top dusters in the territory, one guy specifically, you don't want a damn thing to do with this around here. He's not gonna apply it. Now, I know guys that say, well, you got, get a high clearance sprayer. Goes back to the gentleman that owns all the property around here, he owns a business. That's his job. I don't want the damn crop ran over. I get more damage, even if I had one on one of my farms. What you're gonna pay me yearly, I would run over more than having a plane go over and apply fungicide, insecticide, biologics, something like that.
And even by the time fungicides are applied, your high clearance sprayers, the corn's good. A lot of times.
We do have, a lot of times the crop dusters will, reach out to us, but we do tell our landowners, if you are applying, you want us to turn our blades in line with the flight path, we can do that.
What about?
Again, we're not requiring anybody to install a wind turbine on their property that doesn't want to. There are some, of those, the access road, is part of that, there's compensation for some of those. It might not be enough for people, and again, we're not forcing somebody to.
Okay, here's another question. So, wife, I live on this acreage for over 40 years. Hopefully live there another 20 years if we live that long, and we're gonna have to sell it. Probably not gonna be passed down to the family. I decide to sign an agreement that says, okay, I'll take some money. So the next owner comes in, does that contract get passed on?
Yeah, the easements run with the land, so, new owners are bound by those agreements to put up record, so, it's a title of abstract, so you're getting a title opinion, from our attorney, and we tell you that, that encumbrance is there. So you could do your due diligence, prior to owning or buying the property.
You guys are gonna supposedly get a tax deduction or, tax abatement. It goes out for 10 years, is that correct or not?
It's a federal tax credit, production tax credit, so it's based on, production, there's a certain dollar amount, based on how much is produced from it.
What makes it back to the county?
They're, so Webster County has adopted, I assume they haven't revoked it, I haven't looked, but special assessment, wind energy conversion systems. And that's how it's taxed, otherwise it would be under, there's two ways, it either goes under a replacement tax, which is less beneficial for the county, just by the nature of the structure, or they can adopt a special assessment, which the county has done, which applies an assessment to the wind turbines.
But over a 10-year time period, from the county's perspective, does the taxes start increasing?
It does, I believe that year 7 is when it fully assesses to its full value.
So when my residence or acreage loses 20 to 50% of its value because of what my new view is going to be, I'm a trustee in my territory, I'm not here represented as a trustee. There's another one in this room also. So when we get a valuation of a property, we have to set levies, tax for ambulance, fire, cemetery, so forth, so on. And also the county assessor comes in, which they didn't do this time, obviously, but down the road, all of a sudden our property has lost 20 to 50%. You guys are not paying your full amount in your taxes until 7 years out. How are we supposed to make a budget to give the services that are needed? Especially when I hear that they're talking about earmarking for ambulance and rescue unit, fire protection, needs to have continuing ed, probably different, maybe possibly different chemicals and equipment to take care of this. I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna make ends meet and try to keep everyone happy that may be in my township, when I gotta run the taxes at max and maybe not even able to meet the needs that are there.
I mean, my experience in dealing with assessors, since we do deal with them a lot, with remitting taxes, and things of that nature. They don't see those drastic property value declines like you're indicating. I don't know if you've reached out to Webster County Assessor to determine if they saw a large devaluation in the homes around that project. It's just not been our experience, I guess.
Well, I'm basing it off of Forbes article that I read that was published 2 years ago from wind farms came in, and all of a sudden the property values went down and invested. I guess the other question I'm gonna have is, what should we expect, or what, as a fire board member, what do I need to expect if this wind farm goes in? What do we have to do to get our firemen and our equipment ready for whatever's gonna happen?
So during construction, we will consult with our VLP contractor. In those crews, we'll consult with local EMS. Usually they will run a simulated, issue, so they can respond afterwards. Our supervisors will consult with local EMS to come up with that plan.
You realize that we're a volunteer organization out in our territory, and continuing ed just to keep what they have is very hard for them to do, and have to do more. You're asking them to bite off an awful lot. As far as EMS providing, we're struggling. And that's statewide, that's nationwide. You bring in that industry that you have, it's gonna put a lot of strain on a small community.
I'd like to jump in real quickly to maybe hopefully answer some of your questions. One of the things that we're talking about putting into our ordinance for Mid-American or whatever company would come in to do is to put together an emergency management procedure. And that I would like to see filed before any other permits are filed. I've spoke with Webster County Emergency Management. We've talked about the farm in the southern part of the county. And I've talked to some folks who are on volunteer fire departments down there, and they're saying a lot of the same things that you're saying, that there is no guidance. They don't know what to do if there's something like that. So I think we need to have that. We need to have some sort of guidance for volunteer fire departments, for the local EMS. What are they supposed to do? And, you know, the conversations that I had with our EMS director, you know, he would like to see that too. And I'd like the information that we need to come from him. I know what happens if a wind turbine catches on fire or something like that. Our local guys are gonna go in. They're that good. And I don't want to see any of them get hurt. I don't want to see anybody deal with chemicals or materials that they don't know what they're dealing with. So that's one of the things that we are going to put in, is to have these companies give our local EMS some guidelines and steps. I don't think that's, you know, that's asking too much. Sir.
I have a question. Who pays for the extra maintenance and product required for the secondary roads during construction window? Because I've been down to Stratford where they're building a lot of them. They're deteriorated significantly, the secondary roads up. And we have trouble maintaining them as is currently.
And so much like Lundgren, we do with Holiday Creek, a road use agreement that we enter into with the county. So we take over basically the maintenance of those roads during construction, add additional rock, reshaping them, water trucks, mag chloride if it's required, or some type of dust binder. Once that's all complete, we would work with the county, the secondary roads, or the engineer to review. They may have a checklist and say, hey, you know, here's issues. We'll go back, address those, and then have the county come up on those. So can't think what other wind projects are doing, but, we all understand how, important that is, and we take that, very seriously, whether that's the actual requirement or we voluntarily enter into that. We think it's a benefit for everybody that's obviously have to drive, during construction.
I have a question. This is for the board. So if I understand right, you guys are discussing whether you want to keep it the mile setback or is that's what's on the table. I guess I would like to thank you for pushing it to the mile and not keeping it quarter mile. I appreciate that you are concerned about us. And I would ask that you keep it at the mile. I know that's probably nixed the project, but I think there's a lot of concerned people that would really appreciate that if you kept it there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keep in mind, it's 1,000 feet right now. You also have to keep in mind, we have a project that's already built. I've been with the county for 4 years. I've talked to a number of people. The main question is, have there been complaints about Lundgren Farm? Zero.
Complaints about what?
Lundgren Wind Farm. I've not received any complaints from any residents down there or anybody about that farm. So obviously Mid-American Energy is being a good owner, a good operator, and has worked with those property owners down there. So now we're looking at increasing that amount to provide further protection. We still don't know what that distance is. We're talking about a mile. And you're the advisory board to the Board of Supervisors who will be making the final decision. So we've done our research. We looked at other communities. We want to get Mid-American back to the table, have them give them their input. I think they said they're comfortable at 1,800 feet. We've got our conservation involved, our conservation board. So and we're taking, more importantly, input from the public, which has been real valuable through this whole process. So this is all beneficial for the Planning and Zoning Commission, to make their recommendation at the next meeting, which will be forwarded on to the Board of Supervisors, who will, like I said, will go through numerous public hearings before they decide to make a decision. And they may not make a decision. They may say, hey, our wind ordinance is working fine on the basis that we have received no complaints or no issues down there. And so, I was advised in my job by the board to bring this back, take a look at it, see what other communities are doing, and see if we wanted to go ahead and tweak that. There are some things in that ordinance I think the Planning and Zoning Commission can agree, like an emergency action plan, some other things, protect our natural resources, et cetera, that are very important. And also our residents that are very most important. So, I appreciate all the public input and, let the process continue, gather that input and help guide our Planning and Zoning Commission to make that recommendation, which you may or may not agree upon by the end of the day. But the Board of Supervisors will have the ultimate decision on what they want to do with this ordinance. And again, it may surprise me that they might not do anything on the basis that we haven't had any issues down there. So I'm just looking at black and white, so to speak. So.
Sir.
I'd like to that.
Yep.
From the people I've talked to down there,
Okay.
they're on my petition, who live in the Lundgren area.
I'm glad you're speaking. Go ahead. Yep.
They are against it. And they wish they would never sign the contract and stuff like that.
Okay.
So, how far has the board gone to inquire about the residents, non-participating residents, and the residents who, where's the research on it? Just because you don't hear any complaints, doesn't mean they're not there.
No, I know.
And so,
Yep.
So how far has the board gone and say, hey, this has been in a project this year, how are the residents doing? Have we put anything online saying, hey, if you do this again, would you do it again?
They have the ability to contact my office anytime, just like any other zoning infraction, to voice a complaint, whether it's validity is true or not. And then I would follow through with that, how our ordinance reads. But you may be right. There are people that are down there that are keeping silent for some reason. But, I'm not disagreeing with you.
What I heard is the people down there,
Mhm.
they already feel like they can't do nothing about it because it's there.
They participated
and this
too,
is a
so, yeah,
generational thing.
Yeah. Mhm.
We're planning for something for future generations. It doesn't just affect us here and now.
Yeah.
It's 20, 30 years down the road.
I agree. Yep. Keep talking. Yep.
So I'm saying, it's not just the gentleman over there who has a farm, it's the residents that live in the area that have this concern of what's gonna happen when our kids are
Yeah,
20 years old.
they have to live with it. Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
I hope that some of the folks that you're talking about feel comfortable with going to their supervisor and making comment to their supervisor.
And what,
Contact them,
yeah,
tell them, call in, because-
and what their reasons are. Why don't they, I'd like to understand their reasons, because, yeah, they're living with it. But-
Talking with my supervisor at work who was in Harlan County, there was a petition put online in Harlan County where the residents were able to go in and voice their opinion. So they could go and make it really easy for them to go in and say, hey, no, we don't approve this. Where's the transparency in that?
Okay.
So it's not that hard to make a webpage or something like that put on by the county to find out. Because this is not like repairing a street. This is a generational thing. Our culture of farming is in our area. Wind turbines are not our culture. Our culture is farming, working hard, and earning a living. You go back to county courthouse, I said it during the last meeting, there's no turbines on that picture of our county.
Mhm.
There's farming, agriculture. I worked at the labs. Labs have been here over 100 years.
And that's why I think, that's why I think this ordinance amendment respects that. If you don't want to participate, we're trying to protect you. But if you want to participate, the way the ordinance reads it, it's a mile away if you don't want to participate. It could be 1,000 feet if they decide to leave the ordinance alone. So,
Where's the due diligence of following through with what we already have? Webster County already has windmills and turbines. Where are we, I'm just
I
saying,
know, yeah.
where's our own research and how has it affected the residents down there? This is a valid thing I'm asking, We're making decisions here for our future generations, and we are not even looking back at our own history of what we have, the short history of what we have.
And that's, I agree with you on these points, and that's kind of why we're doing this right now, is that we had the ordinance in place. And like Jeff said, we've looked at a few things within it, we see some things that have worked, we see some things that aren't working. And because of the area that this is looking at, we're seeing things like the marsh area and some of these other things that like you said, this is generational. We start putting wind turbines up around and we only get one chance at these resources. And that's why, at least the mile setback for me is kind of non-negotiable. It has to be that way because we don't get more Miller marshes. We don't get more of these environmentally sensitive areas. So I think this is our opportunity to say, yeah, what's working, what's not working. And that's why we're actually doing this process to try to change the ordinance for the good going forward for the county. So I've got two hands up.
So I actually went to Iowa State for animal science. Many people don't know me for that, but I went because I wanted to speak for the animals. One of that thing is saying, he said the people that live down in Lundgren necessarily don't like it. Okay, so they're not speaking of that. What about the animals that are already here that can't speak for this project? Are there any environmental benefits that we need to benefit from because of the remote, because of the Des Moines River? And you even mentioned going all the way over into Hamilton and Wright County. So now you're affecting the Boone River. My family hunts. That affects part of our hunting ground. And we eat the animals that we do hunt. That affects some of the other people here as well. What are the environmental benefits that we can reach from having this project if it works?
Yeah, and again, the board here, I think we're pretty much in agreement that those type of areas, that's why we've actually increased those distances around that. And I agree with the one gentleman who talks about other counties, and I know Mid-American has put together some numbers of what other counties have. And other counties to me don't matter because we have what we have here in Webster County. And Calhoun County has whatever they have. The other thing that's different with the counties is the populations. And I don't know if there's any correlation between setbacks and the populations within the counties. But what we know here as a board is what we have to protect here in Webster County. So when we first started talking about this, I told Jeff, I said, the only constant I see with all the different counties different setbacks is if they're all different. And everybody is protecting their own thing. So that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that we are protecting what we have here in Webster County, not just for right now today. This gentleman says, and look at every decision as if it was 50 to 100 years from now. So. I got two hands.
Oh, okay. So my question is, I only own 2.7 acres. What is my voice in this if my 100-acre neighbor decides to put a farm up?
I would
And
like,
I don't want it.
I would like Mr. Ott to maybe
Can
answer
I,
that.
can I answer that, because it's piggyback into that. To me, well, you don't have to sign it if you don't want to, is an intellectually dishonest comment, because, like she said, most people live on 3 to 5 acres. They don't own the 80 or 40 attached to it like it originally was. Everything is this new feudal society where you have lords and serfs, and you have a few lords who own everything, and as the population ages and dies and their kids sell off the land, that number of landowners is gonna decrease. And you're gonna have a few people, this is just the way resources work out in the galaxy and the universe. You have fewer and fewer individuals accumulating more and more resources. That's just the way it is. And that's no different than our landscape. You have fewer and fewer landowners owning more and more land. So yeah, our 3 to 5 acres, it's half a mile. Great, there's not much you can do about it. Half a mile for a windmill is, you might as well put it next to my front door. It's nothing.
So I can go ahead and answer her question, if
Okay.
you don't mind. So I mean, the way the ordinance is written right now, it can be 1,000 feet from your home. Now, the question is whether or not you want to participate in the project or not. If you decide not to participate, you're on 2.7 acres, a windmill would have to be 1 mile from your house. If you say, I want to participate, they may not put one on your acreage there, but it may be within the way the ordinance is, proposed ordinance is written, 1 mile, then you would be deemed a participant. And you'd be working with Mid-American on some type of an agreement to allow that to happen, compensation, so if possible.
But are they even getting an easement agreement? Somebody that owns 2.5 acres, are they even getting an agreement to do what you just said, to participate or not? Is she even getting that choice? Does she get that choice?
Well, they would be required at the time,
Yeah.
time they came in, they would have to submit all their documentation and everything when they came in for their conditional use permit and identify those participants, non-participants. And we'd examine all that to make sure everything made sense, so,
Right.
yeah.
So basically, I don't
Any-
get the choice, no, because I don't own enough
Because she doesn't
ground.
own enough.
But you don't,
They're not gonna look to me for an easement because there's 500 different.
Yeah, it may not be on your
Have
property,
least resistance.
No.
yeah.
Yeah,
it's not-
but she doesn't get a choice. Like, she won't get a choice to participate or not, so she'll be automatically included in the 1,000 feet, not a mile. We don't get a choice.
If you'd like, I could try to explain.
Go on,
I mean, I think, I know what you're saying. I don't know if I'll say any differently or better, but, the way it's currently set up is we'd have to be 1 mile setback based on the proposed setbacks,
From a house.
right?
They accept the board, because it hasn't been accepted.
Yeah,
But
which states were
but we're talking hypotheticals right now, right, based on what's being proposed, so it would have to be a mile away from that. If we want to site it closer than that mile, within 1 mile, we'd have to work with you on, for those acreage owners, we call them neighbor agreements, recognizing you don't have the land to actually site or host facilities. But you do have to live, with the construction, with the operation of the wind turbine, so there are compensation. Yeah, so we offer compensation. We realize that you're living in amongst the project, right? And so we do offer compensation, whether that's sufficient for you or not, that's up to you to decide. And if it is, you participate, and that's what Jeff was saying, is then that setback could be lowered. But again, if you don't, then it would have to be that.
What if I want it further away from my house? I live where I live because I don't want anything there.
Yeah,
If
no, I
I'm
appreciate
sitting
that.
there,
I mean, much like any zoning, Jeff obviously can speak to this, there's zoning codes to help us, to guide development, right? So that you know what the setbacks are, so you can develop. I understand maybe you may not appreciate that distance. but there may be people that want a turbine, so it's right, it's trying to find that balance, because ultimately, you know, you're probably not gonna satisfy everybody, that's what I think the board is being tasked with, is to try to figure out those people that wanna participate, that are likely not gonna show up at these type of meetings, that want turbines closer than that, but then try to balance it, with the setbacks or the distances that the people that don't want to participate, right? So where is that fine line? You know, and that's linked to my mind, right? Obviously, there's two conflicting, you know, there's a kind of a tug of war, is, you know, and hopefully there's a way that everybody can be happy, or a majority of people, but, you know, I think that's the board's being tasked with.
So then too, that falls back to, someone mentioned a century farm. What happens to our culture? We are a high century farm, northern Iowa area. And that's what we pride ourselves on. You know, there's a big $1 million house in Eagle Grove that no one lives in because they live on the other coast and they won't sell it. Oh, I know they're trying to sell it. They've been trying to sell it for 17 years. But when do we look at the culture of the area and say, let's preserve that culture? It's like the Amana colonies. We don't get that culture back again. They're trying to put a wind farm up by my parents' house in the heart of Mennonite in Amish country. Obviously, everybody up there saying no, because that is the culture that is there. When are we gonna look at the culture of our community? If I wanted to live next to those, I'd live next to the interstate, I'd live in Des Moines, I'd live in a big city. I left San Diego and Port Orchard, Washington, and came back to live in the middle of nowhere.
My name is Mary Larson, and throughout this introduction of what might be coming, I have gone to a lot of these people's homes, and it says 75% participation. And I will guarantee you that where we live, where that little map was with Miller Marsh, there we have 75% at least that are not participating, at least more than that. And many of these are my neighbors. And we do not, this ground it's the best land in the whole wide world. And so they want to come in and put wind turbines up on this land that our grandparents and our parents really worked hard to do. And they want to put these wind turbines up. I live in the country too. I'm a farm girl, and I do not want to live in town and I want my peace and quiet. I want to go out in my garden and not have these clicking of these wind turbines and the flicker of it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Is there a limit of how many we're gonna have in that county?
Well, we don't.
No, we
No,
don't.
we
No, that's what I'm saying, is, I went through, I live a mile north of the solar panel plant. I lived through that, everybody on that road, I went door to door and asked them. You know, nobody said yes, they would do it again. To that project. Nobody. How many more windmills and solar panel plants and everything else, where our county just looks like one big industrial park?
It's a point well said. You can address the Board of Supervisors.
I have not got an answer.
They're the final decision makers on that. So, yeah, that's a good point. So not arguing with you.
And, yeah, and that's a good, I mean, I asked that a lot, you know. I think you had some information on the amount of energy that we're generating. It's well more than what we need within the county. You know, so we know it's not about us. We know it's about going out to other places. But that's always my question too, is when is enough enough?
Yep. And you take Alaska, their residents get a stipend every year from for the energy that they produce. Our power bills don't go down, our taxes pay to put them in, and we pay the electricity coming out of it.
And that gets back, that's why I like the participating, non-participating aspect of this ordinance amendment, because I respect what this lady said over here. 75% of people don't want to participate, that's their right, you know what I mean? So it's like, and whatever that distance is to protect them, you know,
Yeah.
makes sense. So, you know, we are making improvements to this, you know, and so.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. go ahead.
the yellow shirts.
About a month ago, I was up to an auction in Humboldt. And I was sitting beside a guy and got to visiting, and I said, "Where do you live?" He says, "North of Humboldt." I said, "You got windmills up there?" He said, "Yes." He said, "I talked to a couple of farmers, they wish the hell they'd have never signed that lease." You know, I live east of Vincent. My family's there for 135, 40 years. And the curses, first was a hog confinement curse. Then was them damn chickens. About a mile and a quarter straight east of me, there's about 8 million chickens. The flies in my face today are just horrendous. Then the next curse is these damn windmills. Then the next curse is when they go across, you have these carbon pipes. There's always something.
I want to bring up something too, talking about these acreages and stuff. So the vast majority of us, if you look at a platform of North Township, the vast majority of us do not want it. The ones that do want it, don't live there.
And don't need the money.
Don't need the money. They don't live there. They don't have to look at them. They don't have to hear them. You know, if they came in and said, "We got free electricity the rest of our lives, all your medical bills be paid," it might be something to look at. But our rates go up, and then we'd have to look at these things. Plus, we also have a major gas pipeline running through our area. And I noticed that up on the board. What's the setback for that? For a major gas pipeline?
Natural gas.
Natural gas pipeline.
I've got natural gas in my house.
She does. So what's the setback for a natural gas pipeline?
Maybe depending upon the easement itself, for the pipeline operator, you know, typically they'd like to see fall down distance at least. Yeah, there are additional setbacks that go into deciding wind turbine.
I've got one more question for you. So you were mentioning that you didn't know exactly how much electricity went where and how much. So in order to that, why do we all have meters on the post?
Right, you can figure out what's coming in, right? The energy just goes out into the grid. It's an interconnected grid, right? It just goes out, right? So if you set a meter, you can determine what that electricity, you can't tell where it comes from, right? There's no way to track it.
Sure there is. Comes right down the wires, comes right to my house.
Yeah, but where's that electricity? It goes to the
Comes
factory.
right from Mid-America. So, so you can't tell
So
me,
the meter determines how much you use, right?
right,
Not
you
where it
also
comes,
can't
not where
tell
it comes
me,
from.
you
It's
can't,
different.
you can't tell me that you don't know how much power goes where.
You can do flow analysis and. Yeah. I mean, if you know, otherwise, let me know, but I mean, I'm not an engineer, but what the engineers have told me. I'm not trying to blame an engineer, you can't track electricity, you can't track an electron, right? Generally, you know where it may be going, but it's a grid, so maybe if derecho comes in, right, and we need electricity that we can't supply because our systems are down, there's other sources outside of the state that also can come in. It's just like corn, right? We don't just keep the corn that we produce, keep it within the county, right? It goes out as well. So I understand, it's not like Texas where they are sold, right? They are on their own. Something goes down, it's all on them. There is no, interconnected system that can back them up. That's one of the benefits of being on a transmission system like we are.
We have an ethanol plant in Webster County that utilizes some of our corn. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's generally, maybe Webster's different, where all the corn produced is utilized and stays within the county. But that ethanol probably doesn't stay in it, right? It's then shipped off to other users, right?
I think what she's saying is you're taking the grain away that could go to the ethanol plant if there are landowners that put up a windmill and then they decide that is non-producible land, and that ethanol isn't, you're gonna have to source that corn from somewhere else. Is that what you're trying to say, Mary?
Roughly 50% of the corn produced in Iowa, it goes to ethanol, right? What we're taking out of production is roughly half an acre, so it's not like we're taking that food energy out, you know, we have more than enough, we produce more than enough that we can then take it and put into ethanol, right? But again, we're not, you know, we're signing up with people that make that choice of whether they want to grow crops, solely grow crops, or put up a turbine.
That half acre, I understand, is just a piece of equipment itself, but to put that thing up, remove all that dirt, put that concrete down underneath, it's like a seeding bullseye. The ground's never produced what it did originally, never. And I don't know how big of a carbon footprint you're gonna talk about, when you build the damn thing and all the heavy equipment goes up there. I mean, I'm sorry, if you owned 160 acres and you put 6, 7, 8 of them out there, I guarantee you, there's gonna be a very large amount of yield loss in those areas.
And for how many years?
Ever,
If the
ever,
wind
ever.
energy only lasts 20 to 30 years and we're on to, like Nick said, something new that's already there. It's like I have kids that are 40 years old and that time goes fast. And then those 20-year plans for windmills, then they need to come down.
I have a question. So that solar panel plant south of my house, you guys don't know how much power it produces?
You know what? Yeah, we know how much it produces, right?
And you don't know, so you know how much that produces, how much does the Lundgren farm produce? You know, you measure that, right?
Again, we know how much it produces, we just can't track the electrons that come on. We know it goes on to the transmission grid, right?
Right.
And then it goes down to substations, it goes out to the distribution networks. If it's not needed there, because you're getting enough electricity, it continues on, right?
Exactly.
We can't track it.
Right, I understand you only can push it 300 miles
What's the
too.
difference in solar power versus wind power?
But what I'm trying to get at is, you don't know what your residents use in Webster County, and you can't subtract the two? That's what I'm trying to say, is you know what it produces, but you don't know what Webster County uses. I mean, you know what I use, because I get a bill in the month every month. So you can't tell everybody in this room.
Yeah, if your question is, can we figure out the consumption versus generation? Yeah, that would be.
So again, we go back.
I don't know what that number is, but I could get that.
What is the benefit of the residents to have to deal with these and to look at them? If we don't even know if you can't tell me that number, it sounds like they're trying to hide that number.
No, I don't think that we've been asked that number, and I don't necessarily know that often. I don't know what, you know, the consumption is just within the county versus generation. Again, I can get that number for you. If that's.
Am I making sense?
I got you. Sure.
Okay, I'm just wondering,
I got you.
because I know my fuel mileage on my truck.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Steve Smallberger, I live north of Vincent. We all received a copy of the petition that we passed around. People were more than eager to sign this thing. We now have over 400 signatures. And these people live in our area, they own land in our area. Some signatures are for people who do not live in our area, but own land there and they're past generations. So it is very, very possible that I almost say 100% of the people do not want these here. And one final word I might say, this is, don't say I'm very, I have a farm in Texas and I have a tenant that drives up and visits me every now and then. Texas is the state with the largest number of turbines in the United States. He stands in my property and he looks out and he says, this is the most unobstructed view of the best farmland in the world.
In the world, this is it right
It's
here.
exactly what he says. He says, we have water problems. We got, you're here, everything is green, is the best thing. Why do you want to obstruct anything in the view of what you have now? Over 400 people agree. I think this board, this is your constituents. It's not mid-American, that's your job, to protect your citizens. And that's why we're here.
And you're right, and that's what we're trying to do, and just in case folks don't understand who we are and what we are, the Planning and Zoning Board, we're a group of people who are all appointed by the Board of Supervisors. We are not elected officials. We are not really paid officials. We get a little bit for gas money, but that's it. But it's our job to make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. And the Board of Supervisors are your elected officials. They're the ones that you folks put into office. So we're gathering our information, and I appreciate, we don't usually get this much participation, so I do appreciate all the comments and believe me, taking everything into consideration. But it'll just be a recommendation that we will make to them. And then the Board of Supervisors will do with it what they will. We've made recommendations to the Board of Supervisors before, and they have changed it, or they have turned us down. So they have the ability to overrule what we do. So that's why I tell people, I appreciate you coming to our meetings, but I do want you to also talk to your Board of Supervisor members. They're the folks that you guys elected. So they're the ones that will be making final decisions.
We are doing that as well. I
Good.
guess we came to this hoping that you would make the recommendation of the mile setback for participating, non-participating, wetlands, what have you. That's what we're asking.
Yeah, our
Because
supervisor
you
told us to
will.
come here.
Yeah.
Here we are.
So we're starting with you because we know you make that recommendation and they respect your recommendation. So we're asking that of you to consider all of that. Over 400 some signatures in our area that really want you to make that recommendation of at least a mile setback.
Okay, thank you.
That's what we're asking.
And we were hoping that Matt Cosgrove could come to our meeting tonight. He was not available because of a previous meeting, but in our conversations with him, you know, we looked at those conservation areas. We know down the road that there's opportunities for trail systems to be interconnected, opportunities for recreation, that type of thing. And those are the kinds of things that I'd like to see protected. Like I said, we get one shot at those kinds of things, the Des Moines River area. We're lucky in Webster County that we have so many of these features. And that's why, again, why I don't look at other county setbacks. I don't look at what they're doing, because it only matters to me what's going on here.
And we get one chance of the unobstructed view that Steve spoke about. We get one chance of that as well. Not just the marsh areas, but the 2.5 acres she owns and the 3.5 acres that guy owns. It's like, we only get one chance at that as well.
Yeah.
So I appreciate what you're saying with all the conservation efforts, and I'm very supportive of that as well. But the rest of us live and work and raise our children and our grandchildren. And we want the unobstructed view.
And go try and move and buy another acreage in the environment currently. The house is either dilapidated, all the outbuildings are dilapidated, so this is it, we're here. So I'll be here till I'm dead unless the window goes.
Well, and to that point, already our workforce is decreasing. I mean, we have, people are struggling to hire people. If you lose more young people from the rural areas, they're moving to the urban areas. Who's gonna be our workforce? Who's working in the co-ops? Who's working in the field? Who's working in the stores? They're all gonna go to the city.
And that's why the conservation areas to me were so important, because of things like trail systems and recreation and that type of thing. And, you know, with the Des Moines River Basin, like I said, we're so fortunate to have so many of those things, with Brushy Creek and, you know, places for recreation, that are gonna help draw people here, make people wanna live here. And I think those are things that we can't ignore it. And so that mile setback to me is, you know, yeah, it's absolutely huge. But I also feel for, you know, the young lady with the couple of acres. I mean, you're exactly right. You don't have that opportunity to say yes or no. And so I think Jeff's, you know, recommendations on that participating and non-participating, I mean, we've increased that quite a bit. So and that's part of the reason we did. That's why we've increased it now.
And I do appreciate that. I really do appreciate that you're taking those into consideration. And I really, and I know that a lot of us here that live on just a few acres. And unfortunately, we feel like it takes us out of the equation because you could still put it at over a mile from my house, but you still might as well put it in my backyard because I'm gonna look out my window and that's what I'm gonna see. I'm gonna go out to feed my chickens and that's what I'm gonna see.
Well, and that's why I think that by increasing those setbacks and, no offense to Mid-American, but I think that puts the burden back on Mid-American a little bit to say, you know, what are you gonna do for these people? And that's why I wanted him to answer that question is, you know, what do you do for that person that owns 2 acres that's within your area? I mean, I've heard stories that when the other wind turbine farm went in, that a lot of people weren't talked to, that they weren't asked with those smaller acreages. And I'd like to, you know, I'd like to change that. And because they are neighbors, you are gonna be part of it. You do have to drive by it every day.
I mean, the answer isn't compensation either. There's some things compensation doesn't.
I know, yeah.
So the answer is compensation, which I get as a corporation, that's all they know, but that's not, that's. not the answer.
And just so you know, I've got 2 ethanol plants in my backyard, so I totally feel for you. I was telling someone I can walk through the pasture at night in the dark without a flashlight. It's lit up so bad. So I do understand having that aesthetic view. It's important. It's important. It's why you live where you live.
When are you going to vote on this? I was kind of under the thought that you were gonna vote tonight, but apparently you're not. But when are you going to vote for this and when will it go to the Board of Supervisors?
So, yeah, we'll have to advertise that this ordinance amendment as a public hearing. And it's up to the Planning and Zoning Commission whether or not they want to bring this back in a couple of weeks, which will be April 25th, or bring it to us in May at their regular meeting, which will be May 9th. So that's to your discretion. How do you guys want to handle that?
I would really like to do it within 2 weeks.
And then we can advertise it,
Yeah.
get the advertising, required advertisements rolling.
If you put this in the Fort Dodge Messenger, maybe more people see it.
All our advertisements go in the Fort Dodge Messenger. Every advertisement goes in the Fort Dodge Messenger on the ordinance amendment. Whether you read it, or you don't, you don't.
Read that paper from Sam to Stern. I never seen it about the night's meeting. I was told by a neighbor.
Yeah,
So what we're gonna do now is
we'll talk later.
take this, you know, take your information, take your comments. And Jeff is going to, look at what the changes are that we've made to the ordinance. And we're gonna put something together. We're gonna come back in 2 weeks. If that's okay with board,
Yeah,
come back in 2 weeks. And that's when we'll vote on an amendment to send to the Board of Supervisors.
and there will be another public hearing. You'll have the opportunity to speak.
Yeah,
Again.
but you'll know then what we're sending to the Board of Supervisors. And then, like I said, it's up to the Board of Supervisors what they would like to do with it.
Is everyone on the commission obligated to vote
Unless there's a conflict of interest,
and they can opt out on their own?
yes,
Okay, all right.
yes. And that's the same with any board. I know with the Board of Supervisors, I believe it was the same with,
Oh, okay.
a couple supervisor members. If there's a conflict of interest,
Sure.
they can abstain from voting. So that's a good question. So,
Like I said, stay tuned if you plan on being in attendance at that meeting. I cannot guarantee that the meeting is gonna be held here. It might be held. Still could be held at the courthouse, or it might be held at public health. We just have to,
Plan on public health.
huh?
We'll be out of the courthouse by April 25th. I think we should just plan on public health.
We have to
Yeah, I'll
make sure.
confirm it with them.
We'll have to confirm it with public health.
Either here or public health, but
Yeah, I'll be there it'll be either here or public health, you know.
Plan.
I would recommend you have it right here.
As long as Dennis doesn't have a problem with that, I mean.
As far as I know.
you don't think the basement,
No,
the bottom room is big enough?
no, it's not this side, it's half this side.
Okay.
The meeting room is half this side.
25th, April 25th.
Yeah, I would just assume
Have it here?
have you work on getting that together, and if here works, then
Yeah.
let's do it here.
Yeah, there's
yeah,
no sense
we'll
in
need to check in.
Should work as far as I know, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so
But
let's,
just let me know tomorrow.
I'll probably email you tomorrow on this.
so let's just plan on that in 2 weeks here at the same building. And like I said, that's when we'll have our ordinance put together. We will vote to send that to the Board of Supervisors, and then the Board of Supervisors will have, probably 3 opportunities for public comment before they make a decision.
6 P.M. please, is it
Yeah.
6 P.M., yeah.
on April 25th?
25th, yeah.
And again, I think I mentioned this last time, if you guys ever question when a meeting is, it's always on our website. There's previous meeting minutes there, previous meeting recordings. And anytime there's a new meeting, it should be on our website.
All right,
Thank you.
all right.
Thank you all for.
All right, really quickly, first of all, thank the Growth Alliance for allowing us to use this building. We appreciate it. Hopefully folks are more comfortable. And I just want to thank all of you. Like I said, we don't usually get a lot of public comment, but the public comment is what helps us. The fact that we are an advisory board, we take your information and we advise. So I appreciate that all of you came in tonight. And Jeff, if you don't have anything else, I will go ahead and ask if someone would like to make a motion to, I have 2 board members, like 3.
Laura's there.
Laura's here. Hi, Laura. If someone would like to make a motion to adjourn our meeting,
I'll make a motion.
all right, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, and those in favor of adjourning our meeting, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you.
She probably wants me to say.